In the quiet town of French Lick, Indiana, where basketball dreams echoed through empty gymnasiums and weathered driveways, a young Larry Bird stood at the crossroads of his destiny. But this story isn't just about Larry Bird. It's about the coach who made a decision that would ripple through time, touching lives in ways no one could have predicted. The year was 1974. And Jasper King was more than just a high school basketball coach. He was a man who believed in discipline, structure, and doing things by the book. The squeaking of basketball shoes against hardwood floors and the rhythmic bouncing of balls had been the soundtrack to his life for over 2 decades, but nothing could have prepared him for the challenge that walked into his gym that fateful autumn morning. Young Larry Bird, tall and lanky, with a determination that burned in his eyes, wasn't your typical high school athlete. He was quiet, almost painfully so, but his hands told a different story, calloused from countless hours of shooting hoops in his backyard, perfecting a craft that would one day make him legendary. Jasper watched from the sidelines as Larry practiced. The boy's form was unconventional, but there was something special there, something raw and untamed. Yet Jasper King was a man of principles, and when Larry missed 3 practices due to helping his mother make ends meet, the coach made a decision that would haunt him for years to come. He benched his most promising player. Basketball is about commitment, Jasper told his assistant coach Cyrus Bellamy that evening. We can't make exceptions, not even for talent like his. The words tasted bitter in his mouth, but he stood firm. What Jasper King didn't know then was that life had a way of coming full circle. 20 years later, we find him sitting in his modest home, surrounded by photographs of teams long past, their victories and defeats preserved in fading color. The world had changed, and so had his fortunes. The once proud coach now struggled to make mortgage payments, his retirement savings depleted by medical bills and a series of unfortunate investments. But this story isn't about failure. It's about redemption, about the unexpected ways life teaches us its most valuable lessons. As Jasper sat in his worn armchair reading the evening paper, his eyes caught a familiar name. Larry Bird, now a legend in the NBA, was making headlines again, but not for his basketball prowess. The article spoke of a foundation Bird had started, aimed at helping coaches and educators who had fallen on hard times. And there, in black and white, was a quote that made Jasper's hands tremble. Sometimes the hardest lessons we learn come from those who challenge us to be better. Every coach who crossed my path, even those who benched me, taught me something valuable. Roman Vale, a local journalist who had been covering high school sports for 3 decades, knocked on Jasper's door one spring morning. "Coach King," he said, his voice gentle with respect, "I think there's a story here that needs to be told." As they sat in Jasper's living room, the old coach finally opened up about that decision so many years ago. "I thought I was teaching him about discipline," he admitted, his voice thick with emotion. "But maybe I was the one who needed to learn about compassion. What happened next would become a testament to the power of forgiveness and the unexpected ways life brings people together." Word of Jasper's situation reached Larry Bird through channels he never expected. The legend hadn't forgotten his old coach. Not the benching, not the tough love, and certainly not the lesson it taught him about perseverance. One morning, Jasper received a letter. The return address made his heart skip a beat. Inside was a note handwritten in Bird's distinctive scrawl. "Coach King, sometimes the toughest decisions are the ones that shape us the most. You taught me that success isn't just about talent, it's about character. Let me help you the way you helped me." Enclosed was not just a check that would solve Jasper's financial troubles, but an invitation to speak at Bird's basketball camp. "Share your story," the note continued. "Tell them about the importance of making tough calls, about standing by your principles even when it hurts. But also tell them about growth, about learning that sometimes the rules need to bend so character can flourish. The story spread through the basketball community like wildfire. Everett Stone, a veteran sports columnist, wrote, "In an era where grudges make headlines and revenge drives narratives, here's a tale of understanding and grace that reminds us why sports can teach us our greatest life lessons." As Jasper prepared for his speech at the camp, he reflected on the journey. The young players who would sit before him might not understand yet, but someday they would learn that life's greatest victories often come disguised as defeats, and that true champions are measured not by their triumphs, but by their capacity for forgiveness and growth. The gymnasium was packed when Jasper took the podium. Hundreds of young faces looked up at him, eager to hear from the coach who had benched Larry Bird. But the story they heard wasn't about a mistake or a missed opportunity. It was about learning, growing, and the extraordinary power of responding to life's challenges with grace. "I thought I was teaching a lesson about discipline," Jasper began, his voice steady and clear. "But Larry Bird taught me a far greater one about forgiveness and understanding. Sometimes, when we think we're standing firm on principle, we're really just standing in the way of something remarkable." In the front row, Maddox Reed, a promising young player with his own dreams of NBA glory, leaned forward, absorbing every word. This was more than a story about basketball. It was a lesson about life, about the complicated dance between rules and compassion, about the courage it takes to admit when we might have been wrong. The impact of Bird's gesture rippled through the community. Felix Mercer, who had played on that same high school team, reached out to local media. "What Larry did for Coach King, it's bigger than basketball. It's about recognizing that we're all human, all capable of both making mistakes and extraordinary acts of kindness." As the story spread, it touched hearts and changed perspectives. August Klein, a current high school coach facing his own tough decisions, shared how it influenced his approach. "Sometimes we get so caught up in rules and regulations that we forget about the human element." Bird and Coach King's story reminds us to look deeper, to understand the whole picture. The lesson wasn't lost on the next generation either. Soren Bishop, one of the campers at Bird's basketball clinic, wrote an essay for his school paper. "We came expecting to learn about basketball, but we learned about character instead. Coach King showed us that it's never too late to learn, to grow, to make things right." What started as a story about a coach's tough decision had transformed into a powerful lesson about redemption, growth, and the extraordinary impact of choosing grace over grudges. In the end, both Larry Bird and Jasper King had become teachers, showing the world that true greatness lies not in never making mistakes, but in how we learn from them and help others along the way. The tale of the coach who benched Larry Bird could have been a cautionary story about missed opportunities and regret. Instead, it became a testament to the power of forgiveness, the importance of growth, and the remarkable ways life brings people together to help them learn its most valuable lessons. The story of Larry Bird's response to his former coach's hardship spread through the basketball world like ripples in a still pond, but few knew the full extent of what happened next. Camden Holt, a former teammate who had witnessed both the benching and its aftermath, remembered the day everything changed. It was a crisp autumn morning when Larry Bird's foundation announced its first major initiative. The press conference, held in the same gymnasium where Coach King had once made his fateful decision, drew attention from sports media across the country. But this wasn't just another celebrity charity event. This was personal. Elias Kane, the foundation's director, stood at the podium, his voice steady as he outlined their mission. "Today, we're launching the Second Chance program, inspired by a coach who taught Larry Bird one of his toughest lessons. This program will support educators and coaches facing financial hardship, because sometimes those who shape champions need champions in their corner too." Behind the scenes, Rowan Blair, who had worked closely with Bird in developing the program, witnessed a side of the legend few ever saw. Larry spent hours perfecting every detail, Rowan recalled. He wanted to make sure it wasn't just about writing checks. It was about preserving dignity and creating lasting change. The Foundation's first act was to establish a mentorship program, pairing struggling coaches with successful ones. Blake Hollis, a retired NBA coach who volunteered his time, explained the significance. What happened between Larry and Coach King wasn't just about forgiveness. It was about understanding that sometimes life's hardest moments become our greatest teachers. Coach King's story became the cornerstone of the program, but not in the way many expected. Instead of focusing on the benching, Bird emphasized the lessons learned about perspective, growth, and the importance of seeing beyond rigid rules to the human element beneath. Phoenix Cruz, one of the first coaches to benefit from the program, shared his experience. When I lost everything in a house fire, I thought my coaching days were over. But through the Foundation, I didn't just receive financial help. I gained a community that understood the real value of second chances. The impact rippled through the basketball community. Quinn Mercer, a high school athletic director, observed how the story changed the way coaches approached their roles. We started seeing more emphasis on understanding players' circumstances, not just their performance on the court. It was like Bird and Coach King had given us permission to be both firm and compassionate. Dakota Flynn, who had played under Coach King in his final years of teaching, came forward with stories that added new layers to the narrative. Coach wasn't just about discipline, Dakota recalled. He was about building character. The benching of Larry Bird wasn't his proudest moment, but how both men handled it years later. That's the real legacy. As the Foundation grew, so did its influence. Sage Delaney, a sports psychologist working with young athletes, noted the shift in coaching philosophy. We're seeing a new generation of coaches who understand that leadership isn't just about enforcing rules. It's about nurturing potential, even when it comes in unexpected packages. The story took an even more powerful turn when Coach King, despite his initial reluctance, agreed to become a speaker for the Foundation. Cameron Fox, who attended one of his first presentations, described the scene. You could hear a pin drop as he spoke. Here was a man who had made a tough call, faced its consequences, and found redemption not in being right, but in being humble enough to learn from it. Marley Jade, a journalist covering the Foundation's work, captured the essence of what was unfolding. What we're witnessing isn't just about sports or second chances. It's about how grace can transform both the giver and the receiver. Bird could have held on to that benching as a grudge, but he turned it into a gift. The Foundation's impact extended beyond basketball. Ellis Vaughn, an educator facing similar challenges to those Coach King had encountered, found hope in the program. It showed us that our past decisions don't define us. It's how we learn and grow from them that matters. Bird's initiative caught the attention of Alina Garrison, a prominent education reform advocate who saw the potential for broader application. What they're doing goes beyond sports. It's a model for how we can address burnout and financial stress among educators while preserving their dignity and valuing their experience. The program's success led to partnerships with other organizations. Anders Fairchild, representing a national teachers association, helped expand its reach. We saw how the basketball community rallied around their own. It inspired us to create similar support systems across all educational fields. Coach King's role evolved from recipient to mentor. Anders Harlow, a young coach struggling with his own tough decisions, found guidance in King's experience. He taught me that strength isn't about never making mistakes. It's about having the courage to learn from them and help others avoid the same pitfalls. The Foundation organized regular gatherings where Coaches could share their stories and learn from each other. Anders Montgomery, who attended several such meetings, described them as transformative. It wasn't just about financial support. It was about creating a community where we could be vulnerable, admit our struggles, and find strength in unity. Bo Halstead, a veteran coach who had faced his own career challenges, became an active participant in the program. What Bird and Coach King started, it's changing the culture of coaching. We're learning that compassion and accountability aren't mutually exclusive. The story continued to evolve as more people came forward with their own experiences. Bianca Ellison, whose father had coached alongside King, shared family stories that revealed the complex nature of tough decisions in sports. Dad always said Coach King carried that benching with him, not as a burden, but as a reminder that sometimes our most difficult choices lead to unexpected blessings. Carmen Archer, a sports historian documenting the foundation's impact, noted how the narrative had shifted. What started as a story about a coach's tough call and a player's success has become a blueprint for handling life's challenges with grace and turning past difficulties into future opportunities. The foundation's work attracted attention from Cassius Rowley, a philanthropist interested in expanding its reach. What impressed me wasn't just the financial support they provided, but how they maintained the dignity of everyone involved. They understood that helping others isn't just about solving problems, it's about preserving pride and fostering growth. As the program entered its second year, Dahlia Ellison, an educational consultant studying its effects, reported remarkable results. We're seeing not just financial recovery among participants, but a renewed sense of purpose. They're taking what they've learned and paying it forward in their own communities. The impact on young athletes was equally significant. Dorian Bexley, a high school player whose coach had benefited from the program, observed, "Watching how Larry Bird handled this. It taught us that true greatness isn't just about what you achieve, but how you lift others up along the way." As Coach King continued his work with the foundation, he often reflected on how a moment that once seemed like his greatest professional regret had transformed into something remarkable. Elena Carver, who documented these reflections for a sports magazine, wrote, "In the end, this isn't just a story about a coach who benched a future star or about that star's gracious response years later. It's about how moments of difficulty can become catalysts for positive change when met with understanding and compassion." The foundation's work continued to expand, touching more lives and creating more opportunities for healing and growth. But perhaps its greatest achievement was how it changed the conversation about success and failure in sports and education. It showed that true leadership isn't about being perfect. It's about being willing to learn, grow, and help others do the same. As another year drew to a close, the foundation's impact had exceeded everyone's expectations. What began as one act of forgiveness had grown into a movement that was changing lives and reshaping how people thought about second chances. The story of Larry Bird and Coach King had become more than just a tale of redemption. It was a blueprint for turning life's challenging moments into opportunities for growth and positive change. The real power of Larry Bird's response to Coach King's situation wasn't just in the immediate help he provided. It was in the ripple effect that continued to transform lives years after that initial gesture. Emile Foster, a veteran sports journalist who had covered basketball for 3 decades, discovered a deeper story unfolding in gymnasiums and community centers across the country. It began when Emile Jameson, a retired coach from French Lick, uncovered a box of old photographs in his attic. Among them was a faded image from that fateful season. Young Larry Bird sitting on the bench, Coach King standing nearby, neither aware that this moment would one day inspire a movement of compassion and change. Emil Lennon, the current athletic director at Bird's old high school, had witnessed the transformation firsthand. What's remarkable, he observed, isn't just the financial support the foundation provides, it's how it's changing the entire culture of coaching and mentorship. The foundation's work had expanded beyond its initial scope, thanks to the vision of Emil Merrill, its new program director. We realized that every coach who faces hardship has a story that deserves to be heard, Merrill explained. These aren't just financial struggles, they're human stories of dedication, sacrifice, and resilience. Farah Iverson, who coordinated the Foundation's mentorship program, saw patterns emerging in the stories they encountered. So many coaches had made difficult decisions, carried regrets, faced their own moments of doubt, she shared. What they needed wasn't just financial support. They needed someone to say, "We understand, and your contribution matters." The foundation launched a new initiative, spearheaded by Farah Keaton, called Coach's Corner, a series of workshops where experienced mentors shared their stories of challenges and redemption. Farah North, one of the first participants, described the impact. Hearing Coach King speak about his experience with Larry Bird, it gave us permission to be vulnerable about our own struggles. Vinian Garrison, a high school coach facing his own difficult decision about a talented but troubled player, found guidance through the program. Coach King's story helped me understand that sometimes the hardest choices we make aren't about right or wrong, they're about finding balance between discipline and compassion. The foundation's influence spread to unexpected places. Gia Archer, running a small-town youth basketball program, used the lessons she learned to transform her approach to coaching. I realized that every kid on my team might be fighting battles we can't see, she reflected. Sometimes what looks like defiance might actually be determination under difficult circumstances. Gia Ingram, whose father had coached alongside King in the 1970s, contributed valuable historical perspective to the foundation's archives. Dad always said that the best coaches were the ones who could admit when they needed to grow, she shared. What Larry Bird and Coach King demonstrated was exactly that, the power of learning from our experiences and using them to help others. The story took an unexpected turn when Griffin Archer, a former NBA player who had faced his own career challenges, joined the foundation's advisory board. What Bird did wasn't just about helping one coach, Griffin explained. It was about showing the sports world that true greatness includes the capacity for forgiveness and the wisdom to turn difficult moments into opportunities for growth. Griffin Ashford, working with young athletes in underserved communities, saw immediate applications for the foundation's principles. When kids learn about how Bird responded to being benched, it changes their perspective on setbacks, he noted. They start to see that how you handle difficulties might be more important than the difficulties themselves. The foundation established a scholarship program overseen by Hannah Archer for students who demonstrated resilience in the face of adversity. We look for young people who show the same spirit that Larry Bird did, the ability to take life's challenging moments and use them as fuel for growth, Hannah explained. Hannah Easton, one of the first scholarship recipients, embodied this spirit perfectly. Coming from a challenging background, she had faced her own benching for missing practice while working to help support her family. Learning about Bird's story showed me that setbacks don't define you. Your response to them does, she reflected. The foundation's work caught the attention of Hugo Easton, a documentary filmmaker who saw the potential for a broader message. This isn't just a sports story, he insisted. It's a blueprint for how we can handle life's difficulties with grace and turn them into opportunities for positive change. Hugo Jennings, a sports psychologist consulting with the foundation, helped develop programs addressing the emotional challenges coaches face. What we learned from the Bird King story is that sometimes our toughest moments as leaders become our greatest opportunities for growth and connection. The Foundation's annual conference, organized by Hugo Lennon, became a gathering point for coaches and educators facing similar challenges. What's powerful, Hugo observed, is watching people realize they're not alone in their struggles. There's something healing about sharing these stories and learning from each other. Ika Delaney, whose small-town basketball program had been on the verge of collapse, found new hope through the Foundation's support. They didn't just help us financially, he explained. They showed us how to build something sustainable, something that could help others down the line. The Foundation's research division, led by Iker Ingram, began documenting the long-term impact of their work. We're seeing changes not just in how coaches handle difficult decisions, he reported, but in how entire communities approach challenges and support each other. Ileana Carver, running leadership workshops for the Foundation, noticed a recurring theme. When people learn about how Bird responded to Coach King's situation, it challenges them to think differently about their own opportunities to show grace and create positive change. The Foundation's work attracted the attention of Jessamine Ellison, a prominent educational reformer who saw broader applications for their approach. What they've created goes beyond sports, she noted. It's a model for how we can address burnout and hardship in any field while preserving dignity and fostering growth. Joaquin Ashford, working with at-risk youth programs, adapted the Foundation's principles to help young people navigate their own challenges. When kids learn about Bird's response to being benched, it helps them see that how you handle setbacks matters more than the setbacks themselves. The Foundation's impact continued to grow through the efforts of Killian Bexley, who developed a mentorship program pairing experienced coaches with those facing similar challenges to what King had encountered. It's about creating a support system, Killian explained, where wisdom gained from difficult experiences can help others navigate their own challenges. As the Foundation's work expanded, Kira Langston, a sports historian, began documenting its impact on coaching culture. What we're seeing is a fundamental shift in how the sports world handles adversity, she observed. The Bird King story has become a touchstone for turning difficult moments into opportunities for growth and connection. The Foundation's message resonated particularly strongly with Kira Underwood, a young coach facing her own crucial decision about a talented but struggling player. Learning about Bird's story helped me understand that sometimes the most important thing isn't the decision itself, but how we use it to help others grow. As another year drew to a close, the Foundation's work had touched thousands of lives, creating a network of support and understanding that extended far beyond its original mission. The story of Larry Bird and Coach King had become more than just a tale of forgiveness. It was a catalyst for change, showing how moments of difficulty could become opportunities for growth, connection, and positive transformation. The fourth year of the Foundation's work revealed something unexpected. The story of Larry Bird and Coach King had become more than just a tale of reconciliation. It had evolved into a movement that was reshaping how people thought about failure, forgiveness, and the power of second chances. Lana Bexley, a renowned sports psychologist, began documenting what she called the Bird effect, how one act of grace could trigger a chain reaction of positive change. Lana Channing, whose father had coached high school basketball for 30 years, witnessed this transformation firsthand. We're seeing coaches approach difficult decisions differently now, she observed. They're asking themselves not just what the rule book says, but what the human element demands. The Foundation's annual conference, now in its fourth year, had grown from a small gathering into a major event. Lana Easton, the event coordinator, noticed a shift in the conversations taking place. It's not just about sharing stories anymore, she explained. It's about creating a new coaching philosophy that balances accountability with compassion. Leif Ashford, a veteran coach who had faced his own career crisis, became one of the Foundation's most compelling speakers. What Bird taught us through his response to Coach King wasn't just about forgiveness, he would tell audiences. It was about recognizing that our greatest failures can become our most powerful teaching moments. The Foundation launched a new initiative under the guidance of Leif Foster, focusing on coaches in small, economically challenged communities. We're finding that the need for support goes far beyond financial assistance, Leif explained. These coaches need someone to believe in them, just as Bird believed in Coach King's capacity for growth. Leif Kensington, running a youth basketball program in an underserved area, saw immediate results from the Foundation's support. When kids learn about Bird's story, they start to see setbacks differently, he noted. They understand that being benched or facing criticism doesn't have to be the end of their story. It could be the beginning. The Foundation's research department, led by Merrick Archer, began studying the long-term impact of their work. We're seeing a measurable decrease in coach burnout rates in communities where we're active, he reported. More importantly, we're seeing improved relationships between coaches and players. Merrick Ellison, who had interviewed hundreds of coaches affected by the Foundation's work, identified a common thread. Time and again, we hear how this story has given coaches permission to be both firm and compassionate, to make tough decisions while keeping the door open for growth and reconciliation. The Foundation's mentorship program expanded under the leadership of Mina Nolan, pairing experienced coaches with those facing similar challenges to what King had encountered. What makes this program unique, Mina explained, is that it's not just about avoiding mistakes. It's about learning how to turn difficult moments into opportunities for growth. Mina Sutter, working with the Foundation's outreach program, noticed how the story resonated across different sports and levels of competition. Whether we're talking to Little League coaches or college athletic directors, the message hits home, she observed. Everyone has had moments they wish they could handle differently. Nico Dunbar, a sports journalist covering the Foundation's work, discovered an unexpected trend. Coaches who had received help through the program were more likely to become mentors themselves. It's creating this beautiful cycle of support and understanding, he noted. People who've been lifted up are reaching back to help others. The Foundation's impact extended beyond the basketball court, catching the attention of Noah Delaney, an education reform advocate. What they've created is a model for how we can address burnout and stress in any field, she explained. It's about preserving dignity while providing support. Noah Granger, working with the Foundation's education division, helped develop programs for schools facing similar challenges. We're showing administrators that there's a better way to handle difficult situations, she said. It's about finding that balance between maintaining standards and showing compassion. The story took on new life when Odette Fairchild, a documentary filmmaker, began capturing the experiences of coaches whose lives had been touched by the Foundation. What strikes me, she reflected, is how many people carry their own version of the Bird King's story, moments where grace could have changed everything. Odette Urban, a high school athletic director, implemented the Foundation's principles across all sports in her school. We've seen a complete shift in how coaches handle difficult situations, she reported. They're thinking more about the long-term impact of their decisions, about the human element behind every rule. The Foundation's work attracted the attention of Odin Barlow, a philanthropist interested in expanding their reach. What impresses me most, he said, is how they've turned one story of reconciliation into a systematic approach for helping others navigate similar challenges. Paxton Archer, whose coaching career had been saved by the Foundation's intervention, became a powerful advocate for their work. They didn't just help me financially, he explained. They showed me how to turn my own struggles into a source of strength and wisdom for others. The Foundation's psychological support program, developed by Priya Fairchild, addressed the emotional toll of making difficult decisions. Coaches carry these moments with them, she observed. Having a space to process these experiences and learn from them is crucial. Quentin Archer, studying the long-term effects of the Foundation's work, discovered something remarkable. Schools that had participated in their programs showed improved athletic performance and better student-athlete retention rates. It's creating environments where both coaches and players can thrive, he noted. The Foundation's success inspired Quinn Bexley to establish a similar program for teachers facing burnout. The principles are universal, she explained. When we support the people who guide and mentor others, we create ripples of positive change that affect entire communities. Priya Fairchild, conducting interviews for the Foundation's Oral History Project, uncovered countless stories of transformation. What's remarkable, she said, is how many people have their own version of the Bird King story, moments where forgiveness and understanding changed everything. As the Foundation's 4th year drew to a close, Ronan Harlow, a sports management expert, summed up its impact. What started as one man's response to his former coach's struggles has become a blueprint for handling life's difficult moments. With grace and wisdom, it's showing us that our greatest challenges can become our most powerful opportunities to help others. The Foundation's work continued to evolve, but its core message remained the same. Every moment of difficulty carries the potential for growth and positive change. As Sarai Foster, one of the Foundation's earliest beneficiaries, put it, what Bird and Coach King showed us wasn't just about basketball or coaching. It was about the extraordinary power of choosing understanding over resentment, growth over regret. The story's impact continued to ripple through the sports world and beyond, touching lives in ways that neither Bird nor Coach King could have imagined when they first crossed paths in that high school gym so many years ago. It had become more than just a tale of reconciliation. It was a testament to the transformative power of responding to life's challenges with grace, wisdom, and a commitment to helping others grow. As the Foundation's work entered its 5th year, a deeper truth emerged about the impact of Larry Bird's response to Coach King's situation. Stellan Archer, a behavioral scientist studying the long-term effects of forgiveness in sports, discovered that the ripple effect of their story had created what he called generational healing. Positive changes that passed from one generation of coaches to the next. Stellan Barlow, directing the Foundation's new research initiative, began documenting these transformative patterns. What we're seeing isn't just about coaches helping coaches, he explained. It's about how one act of grace can reshape entire communities' approaches to conflict and redemption. The Foundation's work caught the attention of Stellan Harlow, a prominent sports ethics professor. The Bird King story has become a case study in how athletics can teach life's most important lessons, he observed. It's showing us that what happens on the court is just the beginning of the story. Stellan Prescott, working with young athletes in urban development programs, saw the story's impact firsthand. When these kids learn about how Bird responded to being benched, it changes how they view authority and discipline, he noted. They start to understand that sometimes the toughest moments can lead to the greatest growth. Talia Ashford, who had taken over the Foundation's mentorship program, introduced a new element, regular gatherings where coaches could share their own stories of difficult decisions and unexpected redemption. Every coach has their own version of the Bird King story, she explained. Having a space to share these experiences is incredibly powerful. The Foundation's annual conference had grown beyond anyone's expectations. Talia Dunbar, organizing The event noticed a shift in its focus. "We're not just talking about second chances anymore," she observed. "We're exploring how moments of conflict can become catalysts for positive change." Talia Garrison, whose research focused on coaching psychology, identified a significant trend. Coaches who learn about Bird's response to King's decision handle similar situations differently. They're more likely to look for ways to turn difficult moments into opportunities for growth. The story's impact reached new audiences when Thorn Archer began incorporating its lessons into leadership training programs. "What Bird and Coach King demonstrated goes beyond sports," he explained. "It's about how leaders can handle difficult decisions while maintaining their humanity." Thorn Channing developed a curriculum for the Foundation's youth programs, helping young athletes understand the deeper meanings behind the story. When kids grasped that even legends like Larry Bird faced setbacks and responded with grace, it changes how they approach their own challenges, he noted. Ulrich Halstead, studying the Foundation's impact on coaching culture, discovered something remarkable. Schools that had implemented their programs showed significant improvements in both athletic performance and student-athlete well-being. "It's creating environments where both discipline and compassion can coexist," he reported. The Foundation launched a new initiative under Uma Archer's leadership, focusing on preventive support for coaches facing burnout. "We learned from Coach King's story that financial hardship often begins with emotional exhaustion," she explained. "We're trying to catch these situations early." Uma Carver, working with the Foundation's crisis intervention team, saw patterns emerging in the calls for help they received. "So many coaches carry the weight of difficult decisions they've made," she observed. "Having Bird and King's story as a reference point helps them see a path forward." The Foundation's work attracted international attention when Vera Barlow, a sports development expert from Europe, began studying their model. "What they've created here isn't just about helping coaches in crisis," she noted. "It's about changing how we think about leadership and redemption in sports." Vera Foster, implementing the Foundation's principles in youth sports programs, saw immediate results. "When we share Bird's story with young athletes, it changes the entire dynamic of how they view authority and discipline," she explained. "They begin to understand that tough decisions can come from a place of care." The Foundation's research department, led by Viggo Channing, began documenting the long-term effects of their work. "We're seeing changes not just in how coaches handle difficult situations," he reported, "but in how entire athletic programs approach conflict and resolution." Wes Carver, working with the Foundation's outreach program, helped expand their support to rural communities. "What we've learned from Bird and Coach King's story resonates especially strongly in small towns," he observed. "These communities understand the importance of reconciliation and second chances." The Foundation's impact on education policy caught the attention of Willa Carver, an educational reform advocate. "What they've demonstrated about handling difficult decisions with both firmness and compassion has applications far beyond sports," she explained. "It's changing how we think about discipline in education." Xander Dunbar, studying the psychological aspects of the Foundation's work, identified a crucial element. When coaches learn about Bird's response to being benched, it often triggers reflection on their own past decisions. This self-examination leads to more thoughtful leadership. The Foundation's work with youth programs, coordinated by Xiomara Bexley, took on new significance. "We're not just telling kids about a famous basketball player's generosity," she explained. "We're teaching them about the power of choosing growth over resentment, understanding over anger." Yara Easton, documenting the Foundation's impact across different sports, noticed a common thread. Whether it's basketball, football, or any other sport, coaches are learning that their most challenging moments can become their greatest opportunities to teach life lessons. The Foundation's principle of transformative leadership, developed by Eve Archer, began influencing coaching education programs nationwide. What Bird and Coach King showed us, he explained, is that true leadership isn't about never making mistakes. It's about how we learn from them and help others grow. As the Foundation's 5th year drew to a close, Zara Dunbar, a sports sociology researcher, summarized its impact. What we're witnessing isn't just about sports or coaching. It's about how communities can heal and grow stronger through understanding and forgiveness. The Foundation's work had created a new paradigm for handling difficult situations in sports and education. Zion Carver, working with their leadership development program, observed, "We're seeing a fundamental shift in how coaches approach their role. They're learning to balance accountability with compassion, discipline with understanding." The story of Larry Bird and Coach King had become more than just an inspiring tale. It had become a blueprint for turning moments of conflict into opportunities for growth and connection. As another year of the Foundation's work came to an end, its impact continued to ripple through the sports world and beyond, showing that sometimes life's most challenging moments can become its most powerful teachers. As the story of Larry Bird and Coach King marked its 6th year of inspiring change, a remarkable gathering took place in the very gymnasium where their journey began. Aurora James, a renowned sports documentarian, stood in that historic space, capturing what she called the full circle moment, a reunion that would reveal the true legacy of Bird's extraordinary response to his former coach's hardship. Dahlia Rhodes, the Foundation's new executive director, had organized what they called the Legacy Summit, bringing together coaches, athletes, and educators whose lives had been transformed by the Bird King story. "What we're celebrating isn't just about what happened 6 years ago," she explained. "It's about how one act of grace can echo through generations." Nova Wren, who had studied the Foundation's impact across different sports and communities, presented her findings at the summit. "We've documented over 1,000 cases where coaches facing similar situations chose understanding over resentment, growth over regret," she reported. "The Bird effect, as we've come to call it, is changing the very culture of sports leadership." Juniper Cross, working with the Foundation's youth development program, shared stories of how young athletes were learning from the example. "When kids understand that even Larry Bird faced setbacks and responded with grace, it transforms how they view their own challenges," she observed. "They're learning that character isn't built through success alone, but through how we handle difficult moments." Ophelia Blair, a sports psychology researcher, presented data showing the long-term effects of the Foundation's work. "We're seeing a measurable decrease in coach burnout rates, improved player-coach relationships, and stronger team cultures in programs that have embraced these principles," she explained. "The numbers tell a story of transformation." Delilah Wynne, who had interviewed hundreds of coaches impacted by the Foundation, noticed a recurring theme. Time and again, we hear how this story gave coaches permission to be both firm and compassionate. It's showing them that maintaining standards and showing understanding aren't mutually exclusive. Serafina Vale, leading the Foundation's international outreach efforts, reported on how the story was resonating globally. From European soccer clubs to Asian basketball academies, leaders are learning from how Bird handled that moment, she noted. It's becoming a universal lesson in leadership and grace. Iris Lennox, coordinating the Foundation's mentorship program, shared how the story had evolved into a practical framework for coaching education. "We're not just telling them about what happened," she explained. "We're showing them how to apply these principles in their own challenging situations." Maisie Knox, who had developed the Foundation's crisis intervention protocols, reflected on the patterns they'd observed. "What we've learned is that most coaches carry their own version of the Bird King story, moments where they wish they'd chosen differently. This gives them a pathway to healing and growth. Zara Monroe, studying the impact on high school athletics, discovered something unexpected. Schools that have implemented the Foundation's principles are seeing improved academic performance alongside athletic achievement. It's creating environments where students feel both challenged and supported. Thea Whitman, working with the Foundation's research department, compiled data showing the ripple effects of their work. We're seeing changes not just in how coaches handle difficult decisions, she reported, but in how entire communities approach conflict and resolution. Ilara Frost, who had documented the Foundation's evolution, noticed how the story had taken on new dimensions. What started as an act of forgiveness has become a movement about transformative leadership, she observed. It's showing us that our most challenging moments can become our greatest opportunities to teach and learn. Naomi West, implementing the Foundation's principles in urban youth programs, saw immediate results. When young athletes learn about Bird's response to being benched, it changes how they view authority, she explained. They begin to understand that discipline can come from a place of care. Romina Scott, who had studied the long-term effects on coaching culture, identified a significant shift. We're seeing a new generation of coaches who understand that their legacy isn't just about wins and losses. It's about how they help shape character through both success and setback. Daphne Gray, coordinating the Foundation's educational partnerships, helped expand their influence beyond sports. The principles we've learned from Bird and Coach King apply to any situation where leadership meets adversity, she noted. It's about choosing growth over resentment, understanding over anger. Calla Rivers, who had interviewed Coach King for the Foundation's Oral History Project, shared his latest reflections. He told me that what Bird did wasn't just about helping him financially. It was about showing him that our mistakes don't have to define us. They can become stepping stones to helping others. Paloma Cruz, working with the Foundation's youth mentorship program, observed how the story resonated with young athletes. When they learn about Bird's journey, they see that greatness isn't just about talent or success. It's about how we handle life's challenging moments. Esme Lane, studying the psychological impact of the Foundation's work, discovered something profound. Coaches who embrace these principles aren't just becoming better leaders. They're experiencing personal growth and healing from their own past struggles. Lilith Moore, who had developed training programs based on the Bird King story, explained their approach. We're teaching coaches that every difficult decision is an opportunity to demonstrate both strength and compassion. It's about finding that balance between maintaining standards and showing understanding. Vienna York, analyzing the Foundation's 6-year impact, identified key factors in its success. What makes this story so powerful is its authenticity. Both Bird and Coach King showed us that true leadership includes the capacity to learn, grow, and help others do the same. As the Legacy Summit drew to a close, Nora Winslow, the Foundation's head of future initiatives, outlined their vision. We're not just preserving a story, we're creating a movement that shows how moments of difficulty can become catalysts for positive change. The gymnasium fell silent as Larry Bird himself took the stage, joined by Coach King. Their presence together, in the very space where their story began, brought everything full circle. Bird spoke about how that benching had taught him valuable lessons about perseverance and character. Coach King shared how Bird's response to his later hardship had shown him the transformative power of grace. The summit concluded with a powerful demonstration of the Foundation's ongoing impact. Talia Monroe, a young coach who had recently faced her own difficult decision about a talented player, shared how the Bird King story had guided her response. I learned that sometimes our toughest moments as leaders become our greatest opportunities to teach life's most important lessons, she explained. Danica Reed, documenting the summit for the Foundation's archives, captured the essence of what had been achieved. What we witnessed today wasn't just a celebration of the past. It was a blueprint for how future generations can handle life's challenges with wisdom, grace, and a commitment to helping others grow. As participants left the gymnasium that evening, they carried with them more than just memories of an inspiring gathering. They had become part of a continuing legacy, one that showed how moments of difficulty could become opportunities for transformation, how past struggles could become future strength, and how one act of grace could ripple through time, touching lives for generations to come. The story of Larry Bird and Coach King had evolved from a personal tale of reconciliation into a movement that was changing how people thought about leadership, forgiveness, and the power of second chances. It had become a testament to the idea that sometimes life's most challenging moments can become its most powerful teachers, and that true greatness lies not in never falling, but in how we help others rise when we do.